Hey, folks. Thank you for dropping by Kaiser's Castle. I appreciate it a lot. Today, we're going to do the part two of Mercenaries and Contractors, the differences. And a lot of people don't know that per the Geneva Convention of August 1949, soldiers attached to a military unit, foreign soldiers, as long as they were in uniform, were not illegal under the law of land warfare. Although there was another article that was predates that a soldier fighting under another nation's flag uh, could be held criminal in court. So that's the kind of duplicity that you see in the law. So we're going to focus a little bit on the law, I think, in the beginning of this, just to let you know. I mean, even as a contractor, the sticky wicket that they did was give us an ID. Usually, with every agency I work for, you got some sort of ID that said who you were, had your little face on it, and you'd have to wear a 511 outfit. So, what's your thoughts on anything? You got anything to add to that, brother?
It's a funny old one, isn't it? You're breaching the realms of contractor and mercenary if you're working for another government. I suppose it depends on what sort of like category and what sort of criteria you're working towards and what's you know what I mean. What's your mission? What's your goal? Are you there in an official capacity? Yeah, it's a difficult one, and again, that's why there's so many grey areas and where being a mercenary, doing one thing one week and then going in the same place, working for the same people, laws change and you become classed as a mercenary instead of a contractor. And obviously, it's a whole different set of laws, whole different set of sort of guidance and statutes that you come under. Whereas if you're a contractor, you've pretty much got some protections from either the either laws that you're working from with the country flag you're working under, or the laws of the place where you're working. Whereas in mercenary, again, you usually fall foul to the local laws, and don't have those protections. If you know what I mean, buddy, it's a difficult one, yeah.
Oh, I do know what you mean, man. I mean, luckily, I still had my DOD ID. For one job, I worked in Afghanistan, but after we dropped off clients, mission's over, we're flying out the next day. We all go out on the piss. You know how you do.
Yeah.
And we're all flying out to Dubai. As a matter of fact, I got a picture of me in the Irish pub in Dubai airport up on the screen now. But the funny part is, we all go out on the piss. We're hoisting some nice beers over at Gandermack. It's right in the middle of Kabul. And when you walk in, they have lock boxes, and you have to put your guns in these lock
Yeah,
boxes, and they give
yeah,
you
been
like,
down there, yeah.
okay, you know what I'm talking about. And after like dark time comes, you got to go into the bunker bar, the bottom part
Yeah,
of the bar, and you
yeah,
can't be
yeah.
out on the patio. And it's just a surreal place, but it's awesome. And after a while, I look over at a bro of mine. I'll just use first names, Ian, and I go, Ian, what are we going to do, man? We got to get somebody to pick us up. We drove here, but man, we're pretty trashed. And I'm like, and when I say what I said to him and how I agreed with him, you'll laugh because you'll know how drunk I was. He's like, what do you mean, mate? He goes, we'll pick up our guns, we'll get in the vehicle, and we'll drive back to the tower. And I look at him and I said, well, we get stopped by the police. What? He goes, it'll be a bad day for him. He goes, but we'll get home. And I was like, oh, sounds like a good plan. But that's the kind of, like I said, you can tell how fucked up and inebriated I was by just me saying, oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
It's always a good idea at the time, isn't it?
It is. It is. It was funny though. The Gandermack. That's some of the cool stuff when you're doing stuff like that and you're not working under the DoD. I will say this, or any federal agency or American companies. Let me rephrase that. Um, you're subject to local law. Period.
Yeah, yeah,
And if you screw up there, local law is going to pinch you. But the interesting thing is it's kind of nebulous when you're working somewhere overseas. Well, you know this, brother. And the rule of law is pretty much non-existent. It's kind of nebulous how you're going to actually do any time or get arrested by their laws. Do you understand what I'm saying? Unless it's egregious, there's video and everything else on it.
Yeah, yeah. It's again, it depends on what capacity you're working. There's been places I've worked in Central America, in the Near East, and places like that, where it's like, don't worry, you don't fall under their law. Even though you're working in their country, you're protected from their law. You can basically do as what the fuck you want without being worried about the local laws, the local statutes, and stuff like that. Again, but it depends on what capacity you're working in. Certainly in places like Iraq back in the war, where the police were just fucking bandits, where you didn't have to worry about
Yep.
it. The police pulled you over, you just stuffed your Glock in their face and told them to fuck off.
Yep.
Or like you said, it'll be a bad day for them if they try and do so. I mean, you just look how we dealt with the police in Basra, where the two Hereford guys got pinched.
Yep.
They were driving around in a local vehicle with all the kit, all the surveillance kit, and they got stopped by the Iraqi police. They got arrested, and then the Iraqi police were obviously going to sell them off to whatever insurgent group wanted them. Obviously, we when I say we, I say the British Army
Right. Right.
got wind of it, went down there with a squadron of Challenger 2 tanks and a battalion of guys, and just basically just one of the commanders went forward, said, "I believe you've got something that belongs to us." Bit of a firefight ensued. They got the guys back after going in the building and killing a few of these Iraqi police, stroke insurgents, and then proceeded to just fucking hesh the building to pieces from the Challenger 2 tanks, and then dropped a JDAM on the fucking place.
Nice.
Yeah, as if to say, this is what we think of your laws, basically. We've got our own laws, just leave us a fuck alone, or we'll just mess your day up, So, again, there's certain places where you can do that, and there isn't certain places, especially in the more civilized countries, let's say, where it's not so chaotic, where you do come under laws. I did a bit of work in Cyprus, and for an international organisation, and we saw it was sort of semi. We came under the local laws, if you know what I mean. But pretty much we got left alone. We flashed our ID cards, and the police there reluctantly just went, just go away. It wasn't worth their hassle of chasing something up, because the people that we're working for had their own sort of police, their own sort of laws and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's again, whatever capacity you're working in will dictate of what sort of laws you come under. As a contractor, you tend to be governed by more laws
Yeah.
of the people you're working for, the nation you're working for, the local law of armed conflict as well. Depends if you're in a combat role. There's been times I've worked abroad where we've not had sort of free reign to do what the fuck we want to do, or we've been governed by God knows how many laws, to the point where it just stifles your ability to do your job properly. Where as a mercenary, you don't have that issue. You just
Right.
got to basically run the gun. If you know what I mean. If you get caught, you get caught, and it's no one's going to come and rescue you. You've got to get your own way out of that shit, and however you do that is however you do that.
That's right.
But,
That's a lot of things that a lot of people don't understand is that it is your bacon. And so you have to think, we can tell jokes about getting drunk and stuff, but notice when we do, it's on our off time, no responsibility, this, that, and the other. If you're actually, like, I shared this with you the other day, the job I had working in another country, um, real low key, but it was with no support. Now, you want to delve into paranoia. That's why I say when these dudes come up with stories about, oh, I was out in the middle of the jungle or this, that, and the other, and I was out lighting everybody, whatever bullshit. I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard of a real story like that. First off, you're in a country that was not, it wasn't third world completely. It was in places. Well, it's a string of islands. I think 120 islands total, and it's in the Pacific. But I was there just to investigate something, to check something out, to find out facts. And when you're cut off, you don't speak the language, and yet you're trying to flow through everything. I had an interpreter that couldn't barely speak English, if that tells you anything. So the only logistics was the amount of my what do they call that? Oh shit! You Brits have a term for it, and I'm mind dumping it. They give you a certain amount of money to handle your business. A float.
Yeah, float.
A float, yeah.
Not so much blood money, not your blood money that you use to get out of bother. It's like this is how much you've got in your job, your allowance.
Yes.
Let's say, just call it your pocket money.
Yes.
This is how much you've got to sort of get the job done. Let us know if you need any more, but we're going to need, again, it depends what capacity you're working for. We're going to need sort of receipts or you know what I mean, an invoice while you're doing all this.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you don't get a receipt, every job I've had with a float, if you don't have a receipt, if you, the 2IC, except for this one, there was no 2IC. It was just me and that Terp, who was also a driver. Imagine that. But it still boggles my mind. He could barely speak English, and yet I got the job done. And that country is so paranoid that unlike...
Well, it is. And it's getting worse.
Oh, yeah. Well, unlike Singapore, where they got cameras everywhere that they can check you out and understand or try to get a flow of what you're doing. And, when you get a phone there, you got to get your SIM card locked into your passport. And the same thing with a vehicle. If you rent one in Singapore, you go to the 7-Eleven, the same place where you get your SIM card for your phone. And what they do is they passport to this card. Well, the card you set into the vehicle, your rental or whatever, and that card will click off on every street. They got like those, we call them Go Pass or Pass Goes or something. It's a way that truckers pay without stopping. They pay any fees or anything to the state.
like they do in London. It's like a congestion charge or some shit like that.
Yeah, it's some crazy crap.
Like a toll road type of deal.
Yes, but see, they also know exactly where that car is.
Yeah.
That's the key, and who's in it, or who should be in it, via your passport because of that card. And over in, I'll just say where it was at. It was an island in Indonesia, a couple islands actually. I had to take speedboats, but that's another thing, man. Those big passenger jet boats, those were an interesting thing. That there's one up in Lake Erie in Ohio, but like I said, that was a common mode of transport, was boats in Indonesia. Everybody seemed to have a boat, a motorcycle, or a car. But like I said, it wasn't quite first world and it wasn't third world. It was sort of a blend of the second world that.
Yeah, it's a bit like Central America. A lot of Central America is like that. You go some places like Belize or Guatemala where there's some really nice places. Like you go to Belize and you go to the Keys in Belize and it's paradise. You go to Belize City and there's certain bars there that we were drinking in. And there's a lot of American vets there, Vietnam vets. And we're like, how come you come to Belize City? They said because it's the closest thing to Saigon.
Right.
You know what I mean? Honestly, it takes them back to their days where there's that blend of, there's a casino, you know what I mean, where there's these millionaires spending X amount of hundreds of $1,000s a night, and within 2 minutes walk, you're in abject poverty where it's basically run by cartels, you know what I mean, and people are getting decapitated every night. It's fucking crazy. So it is that sort of like the weird places to work in, aren't there? I mean, you look at places like Afghanistan where it's like 99%
third world,
primitive sort of stuff. You
Mud
go to
hut.
places, places in Africa and stuff like that. You look at the Horn of Africa, places like Nigeria, Sudan,
Somalia,
Somalia, Kenya in certain places, Sierra Leone, where you've got like the main towns and there's money there, but you don't see much of it, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, the one interesting thing, I'll go back to Indo after I make this comment. When I was younger, I did a job in Djibouti, and Djibouti, because of the French, at that time, the French were still there heavily. The Legion had and now I think it's the head of SOCOM. It's not classified, so I can talk about it, but for AFRICOM. And anyway, so Djibouti was sort of a blend of the first and the second world. So you kind of get that. But the oddity was Somaliland right off Somalia. They're just separated by a little bit of water. Somaliland actually has a functional government. And Somalia is in full out, always will be, I think. It's just their nature. In full out tribal warfare or drug clan warfare or whatever you want to call it. So, but yeah, Indonesia was real weird because instead of tracking you through electronic means, they actually would physically put somebody on your trail. They call any white guy or any foreigner a bule. And so there's one picture I shared. I'm not going to share it here, where I needed a picture of the guy who's following me to get his rundown. And I ended up sending it out, the way I can, the way we do, man. That's all I'm going to get into. And ID'd him, but he was an intelligence officer for Indonesia. And so I take a picture next to, there's soldiers everywhere all the time in that country. And so there's this one soldier. I'm like, oh, I like your camo, man. You want to get a picture? He's like, sure. He spoke a little bit of English, thought it was cool to be around an American, I guess. I don't know. And so that goofy picture of me with my arm around him, that was to get the guy inside the door.
Yeah.
So I had my driver/interpreter take the picture, and he didn't even know why he was taking the picture. He was just like, you want a picture now? Here? Want me to get away from it? No. Face the door, too. And he got a clearer picture, too. Or I got a clearer picture when I had him go over to get a picture with that guy. I said, since you took the picture, I'll take a picture of you. And I purposely schemed in on the door to get a clearer picture just in case the other one wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And but it looked like I was taking a picture, and that Intel guy was just a moron. So, I faced
just Fieldcraft 101, isn't it?
Yeah,
Tradecraft 101, yeah.
Basic.
I've seen the picture, and it's pretty obvious as well. He doesn't even try to hide the fact, does he?
No. He's fucking looking right at me the whole time. Probably speaks English and everything, but all he's hearing is, hey, oh, great, and we're drinking, that sickening sweet tea that you get everywhere in the flipping world that'll give you diabetes faster than fucking cancer.
Yeah.
And smoking cigarettes. And it's really interesting because it's the most populous Muslim nation. And that's the interesting part, I guess, that you'll find doing this type of work is, but the men like to drink their beer. So actually, virulent Islamism has a hard time starting there or even being there. And the women, to make money, prostitute themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's just an oddity in the Islamic world. And, you don't hear about many Islamic factions that are heavily violent from Indonesia. The Philippines, on the other hand, had some for a while, and at least when I was there. The Philippines, for a while, had a problem with Islamic terrorism, but Duarte's pretty much put the kibosh on that bullshit.
Yeah, he doesn't fuck about, does he?
Nope. He'll drop a building on their ass. He believes in total warfare.
Yeah, he doesn't mess about. But he's got sort of. He was very keen to get his special forces trained up well. I know some guys that have been out there and done a bit of work out there. They said, they don't fuck about out there. It's like the Thai government. You go to Thailand. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Yep, been there.
The Thais do not fuck about, especially when it comes to drugs and things like that. It's black and white. If you get caught smuggling drugs, guess what?
Dead.
You're gonna die.
Yeah.
You're gonna fucking die. Usually by firing squad, or some, you know what I mean, some archaic sort of execution, hanging or execution squad or something like that. It's not so clinical and cut and dry as it is in other places like the States, where it's either where it's lethal injection or something like that. I know some states still do use the chair and stuff like that, but yeah, there's no messing about over there. There's no I'm gonna hire this world best lawyer to get me off. They don't give a
Nope.
fuck who your lawyer is. You're getting fucking hung.
You're getting
You know,
hung, or you're gonna
and
get beheaded.
yeah, and again, it comes back to our sort of like main subject to this conversation. It's operating within those laws. You know, I know some guys that I used to work with a few years ago from my regiment that went to other units and other sort of like task forces that worked with the DEA in Colombia and places like that, purely because of their history. We had a guy, I won't mention his name because he's still active.
Right.
Spent time. It's a quite a funny story. And if any of my friends hear this, then they'll know what I'm on about. He was in my regiment, and he was a lance corporal at the time, and we were in Northern Ireland, and he just got bored of it. He came back on his 2 weeks leave. Okay. I know. Okay. It's where was it? Yeah, he went.
He was a lance
basically.
corporal.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
yeah. He was a lance corporal, and he didn't go back. He didn't go back off leave, and he decided to go AWOL. Well, after a couple of weeks of being AWOL, he thought this is no good. He was a soldier through and through, so he disappeared and he joined the Foreign Legion. While he was still a British soldier, obviously the Foreign Legion don't care. They're just like, there's somebody at the door, they want to join the Legion, and that's what it was back then. The Legion's a bit more strict nowadays in who it takes and things like that. But back in the day, they didn't fucking care. You know what I mean? It was just somebody wants to join the Legion, and he joined the Legion, and he did very well. He joined their second rep, their parachute battalion.
Regiment.
Then he went.
It trains you, the parachutist.
Yeah. Then he went to their recce teams, and he was in their recce teams for a while. Well, after a couple of years, he left the Legion and came back to the British Army. The British Army were like, okay, you've been AWOL for X amount of time, so they put him to like your version of Leavenworth. Ours is Colchester. Sent him to Colchester for a while. He came out of Colchester. Obviously, he was very fit, very switched on. He'd just been running recce's in Africa with the Legion, and he went to do one of our battle courses. It's called SCBC, Section Commander's Battle Course, down in the infantry school in Brecon, down obviously in the Welsh Mountains where the SAS and that do the selection. That's where we do our battle courses. He came back from there, promoted, and he just carried on his career. He did some what we call special duties. It's sort of like
right.
It's hard to explain to the Americans, especially those who have sort of no sort of knowledge of the British Army. It's sort of a special forces role, but you're not classed as special forces. Right. It's like assignments. It's like undercover stuff. It's basically what the ISA do for the States. You know what I mean? Yeah. What the ISA does is we had sort of that in the British Army called the 14 Intelligence Company.
Right. You're a fresh face, so that actual covert officers aren't blown by the recce. And before you continue that, I have to apologize to you. And look, with OBS, when I mute, you're still going to hear it by the way we're talking, but the people won't. So they're like, okay, buddy, that's what they heard. And it's because my dogs were barking, and I told them to be quiet. And Baz is like, okay. So no, I wasn't talking to you, and I had to explain that faux pas. And it's because I never told you. If I'm muted, no matter what you hear, and I was muted, it's not going to come across, bro.
I just thought they'd heard it, and obviously I thought I was going to jump in on the joke. So he went to 14 Intelligence Company, the DET. They were the guys that were working undercover in Northern Ireland, doing certain things. But there's actually a regiment now called the Special Reconnaissance Regiment. It comes under the guise of UK Special Forces, and they basically do what sort of ISA do, and and your certain recon teams, your covert recon teams, and you've got in the States. So he did that for a few years, and he was approached by another governmental agency, basically offering him the opportunity to go and work out in Colombia alongside the DEA. Because of his history of where he's been and stuff like that, he had a good
Right.
backstory. Obviously the British Army as the the MOD as the DOD can do, they can make you disappear quite easily, and cover up any military history and stuff like that.
Well, plus as a Legionnaire, if he did his 5-year contract, he got French citizenship and a new name, and it's clean. So he has a French passport
Well,
also.
he actually didn't do that. And he did all 3 years, I think, 3 and a bit years, and then decided to come back to the British Army.
He
You know,
deserted the Legion. I got you.
basically, he was like, "Do I stay with the Legion? Do I go back to the British Army?" He'd done his time in Africa. He'd sort of done that, and he came back and he wanted to do something different. Hence, he went to go and do special duties. Come back from there. It was actually while he was there, he was offered the opportunity to go and work in Colombia for the DEA. His personal circumstances sort of didn't really allow that. So we had to turn that opportunity down, and he went to another branch of the UK Special Forces, where he still serves to this day. Real good guy. But he was telling me all about it a couple of years later, and he said, "Look, it was a strange job, because even though it was sanctioned by the British government, he wasn't working for the British government. But in the same guise, he wasn't working for the American government either." And it was sort of like a quasi-mercenary thing, but where he'd have some kind of support or some kind of backup if things went wrong, if you know what I mean. And by backup, I don't mean fucking Apache gunships coming in, but if he got lifted or he was arrested or anything like that, somebody would walk into somewhere, a police station in South or Central America, with probably a bag of money and said, "This guy belongs to us. Can we have him back? And let's make this fucking thing disappear." He said it was a really interesting job, and it's a constant. People don't really see it, but it's happening a lot. Especially nowadays, where there's that opportunity to do sort of semi-official stuff through your government. Again, it's that murky world of contractor / mercenary / official serving dutiful soldier, and the MOD and the DOD do it quite a lot. I mean, on the last sort of like talk on contractors, I did mention it, that there were certain conflicts where private military companies were actually sending out their operators, and the guys from Hereford were actually getting their troopers, their blades, and going, "Look, you're going to take a inverted commas career break for fucking 6 to 8 months, and you're going to go and work for this company." Basically, you're still getting paid by the British Army, but you're just going to go out there with this private military company and get a feel for what's going on the ground. And it's that mutual love. Look, we'll give you this all singing, all dancing fucking pipe hitter, this door kicker, to go out and work for you. And while he's out there, he's bringing back intelligence for us to see what the ground's like. It's that keeping everything current, if you know what I mean.
The lay of the land. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally, look, you and I both know contractors, mercs, people on loan, straight up biz. You're the plausible deniability warrior. And that's what it is, because they're not going to come to your aid unless you are working officially. Unofficially, you decide to take a job, it's big boy rules. You fuck up, you're going to pay the piper.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that does happen. A lot of the things they did, like in Europe, I think England was the leader of it. And it's because of sandline. We can talk about that a little bit. I'll throw up an old Merc pick from back in Biafra. The type of dudes that were out there during that era. And the funny thing is, all those old pics, they were either floppy hats or berets people were wearing. And
short shorts and fouls.
Yep. And driving around in Jeeps with MGs all over them. Yeah. And how many of those guys were sheep dipped? And that's another thing that well, we'll get into sheep dipping in another podcast, I guess. But the plausible deniability warrior is something that's real. It's something that's interesting. Very few will ever do it, and yet everybody gets into contracting thinking that's what they are. And in all honesty, if you're working for your own government, you got no plausible deniability, and neither do they, because they gave you an ID. I think I shared with you the two morons that I ran into contracting that said they were mercenaries. So yeah, you run into this shit, and there's static security, PSDs. These things are real. They're good jobs. I don't hate on anybody who does it as a contractor, but when you start trying to convolute them into, PSD, what's the primary mission for you on a PSD? Get your client off the X, period.
Get him from A to B in a safe manner, on time, in one piece.
Yep.
You're not there to kick in doors and fucking stack bodies.
That's
you're
right.
There as a deterrent, and all you are is you're protecting something, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something or someone.
Yeah.
That's what you're there to do. Something or someone. A building, a person, or something that can be moved around. That's all you're there to do. You're not there to kick in doors. Now, it's a difference if you are part of a PSD that has an HRT speciality or a capability HRT. Let's say your client your client is lifted from under your nose and he's taken somewhere. And again, it's at that same. We call it the golden hour when you get injured, and they've got to get that golden hour to get you back to a facility where they can put you back together. It's also that golden hour if you go missing or someone goes missing. You've got sort of that golden hour to fucking surround the area and just saturate it with your guys before this person's put a fucking into the boot of a car and take it out to some mud hut in the middle of the desert where he's going to get either sold on the internet in the dark room to any other fucking jihadis that want him, or he's going to be used as a propaganda tool and he's have his head sawn off or her head sawn off on Al Jazeera. So you've got sort of that HRT specialist where you can, the client's been fucking lifted. What we need to do is go and get him. We've got this intelligence. We've got this intelligence. If you're lucky enough to work for a company that has ISR capability, and I'm looking at the bigger ones now, like Aegis and what was XE / fucking Blackwater, whatever they want to call themselves this week, where the chances are they have got sort of some official capacity, you know what I mean, where they've got ISR capabilities. Where you're singing all dancing, kick some doors and shooting people in the grape,
Well, you brought up Aegis, man. Now, here's the funny part about that. People don't know. Mark Thatcher and the boys, I don't know if we covered this in the last time or not, but this is back in the golden era. This was an old school hit. And it was, I think, Papua New Guinea. Equatorial Guinea, that's it. Yep. And anyways, Mark Thatcher and them wanted to go in there and do a raid, Margaret's son. And so they hired Tim Spicer. And Tim Spicer actually assembled people. I'm laughing, but there's actually a couple dudes I, have run across before that actually went to prison over this shit. And one of them died actually from it. But the reality is they got intercepted on their first landing. I think it was, I can't remember where it was. I want to say Nigeria, but I'm probably wrong. And, here you got all these dudes with guns. And, there were other contracting companies, let me rephrase that passed on that opportunity. And, but he just was founded by Tim Spicer. So I guess he fell in the right direction upwards. He got a $400 million no-bid contract for Iraq right after it kicked.
And it was quite strange that because I know a lot of the sort of US PSD, PMC companies kicked up a bit of a fuss that it was, even though it was a US government contract, they contracted it out to a British company, which is pretty much unheard of. You know what I mean? Even to this day. because obviously it comes under a lot of things. Like if I go look now for a job with triple canopy or something like that, 9 times out of 10, it's the one governmental, US government clearances, US
Right.
government, you know what I mean, DD-14, whatever you call them, your discharge
DD
papers.
214s,
That's it,
current
DD-214s.
clearances, or at least
Yeah,
you're able to get a. Oh shit! It's I haven't had one of them in such a long time. I think, fuck, what was it called? When you first get your clearance, when you first join the military, or you work for the government, they give you a temper. Well, you can see, like, let's say you can see um, secret or sensitive information, right?
yeah,
But you're
yeah.
not getting a top secret. It's just like it's not a waiver, but it's a temporary ability because some of the weapon systems on different things you may see, parts of them may be classified, and so a regular troopy may run across that. And so I'm trying to think of the name the U.S. calls it, but an interim clearance. You'll get an interim clearance for it. And it's just a basic bullshit clearance, but they're doing the investigation while you got that interim clearance. Now, if you lied or if you've got some hinky shit and they deny you your clearance, you can be ass out of your job. That's no bullshit. They can throw you right out of the military for it too. But yeah, they're real particular about that. And I've also run across it though from being an American going to work for a British company where because of the licensing, quote unquote, all that is a tax, honestly. That's just a tax that you paid the government so you can do your job as you've always done it. And it absolutely never made any sense to me. I went through a course, I think it was where was it in Canada? I'm trying to remember. Damn it. Anyways, I went through a course just to get it. And then afterwards, I was like, I paid all this money for nothing because no U.S. company gives a fuck about that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again, it's one of those sort of like them nuances and quirks of working with one company and then going to another. Like I had friends that were getting out of the military, and they said, "No, we're going to go and do this firearms course in South Africa." And I was like, "Why are you bothering going to do a firearms course in South Africa?" Yeah, it's so we get our ticket. And I'm like, right, okay. Who are you going to go and work for? Or they were mentioning the company, and I said, okay, I know firsthand that that company aren't using M4s and 6-hour pistols. They're using SIG assault rifles or G36s and Glock pistols. So you got your ticket to go up there, say that you're an all singing, all dancing operator with your M4 and your SIG pistol, when you're not going to use them. So you're paying X amount of fucking hundreds of pounds slash dollars to fly to South Africa to fire off some weapon systems that you're not going to be using. So why fucking bother?
Right.
It's crazy. But like I said, to bring us back on the track to sort of the contracting mercenary sort of differences, I think what you've got to do as well is sort of look at the types of contractor that you've got. So you got contractor, and back in the 70s, contractors weren't really a big thing. It was sort of if you worked for a private military company, you were known as a mercenary, and there was a lot of laws like basically you weren't protected nowhere near as much as you got now. Now, because of the nature of warfare that we're carrying out. Again, look what the type of warfare we were fighting in the 70s. It's a lot different what we're carrying out now, where the military just isn't big enough. Even the US military just isn't big enough to do all the jobs that it needs doing. Like obviously, the interim government of Iraq needed stuff doing. The military needed things doing. The US government needed things doing,
Yep.
and just there isn't. You can only ask a soldier to do so much before he starts being ineffective.
Right.
You can't do even. You look at the guys from Task Force Black and stuff like that, Task Force Maroon, Task Force Orange, all the Gucci TFs from the Iraq era where they were kicking in fucking doors every night. I know guys in 375 Ranger Battalion. They were just meant to be going out on an evening running ops and getting their heads down during the day. Then it got to the point where they were doing shitty details during the day and then even operations during the day. And it got to the point where they were pretty much ineffective just through lack of sleep. You can only work for so much. So they have to spread the love somehow. And through governmental constraints, budget constraints, military constraints, the will of the people as well. You've got to think of the will of the people in your home nation. How many coffins is there seen coming back with flags draped over them? Where, let's be honest, 10 soldiers come back from Iraq, especially in the UK. Let's say 20 or 30 soldiers from the same unit to come back to the US. It's quite a big thing. It's on national news that all these flag draped coffins. 30 people from Sandline or Triple Canopy or Blue Hackle come back. Nobody really gives a fuck because they aren't soldiers. In the public's eye, they're not soldiers. In my eyes, they are just soldiers, just working for a different. They're working under the same flag for the same thing, but now it's not out of a sense of duty. It's more from a monetary gain, if you know what I mean. So that's the difference now. Is what we would call mercenaries 20 years ago and shunned by public / the government are now being paid highly by the government because they don't have enough people to do the job that they needed to do. And obviously, you look at people like, companies like Blackwater that were picking up the slack that the American military either didn't have the manpower for or the skill set, because there were some jobs that obviously Blackwater, and I'll use Blackwater as an example because of sort of the biggest, most well known
and a good example.
Yeah, they were carrying out jobs that the US government couldn't. They had only so many special forces there. Now all of a sudden you've got this massive pool of ex-special forces guys wanting to do the job and pretty current still. You know what I mean? So it would be crazy not to dip into that pool and say, right, we've got X amount of thousand Green Berets, Delta, SEALs, Rangers, MARSOC, Force Recon guys out here already. We've got, say, 8,000 of them, but we've got jobs that we need 10,000, 15,000 people for, so we need X amount of contractors to come do it. Well, on the flip side to that, you look on the mercenary side. Now, the mercenary side is usually not done out of a sense of duty. Oh, well, in fact, I'll scratch that. I class as two types of mercenary. There's the moral mercenary and the monetary mercenary. The monetary mercenary is there for their own gain. Okay? Now, I mean monetary in a sense of getting something out of it. Okay? That's either money or because they're a reward junkie. As any soldier, Marine, Airman, Special Forces operator, contractor will tell you, there's nothing like being in battle.
Yep.
I could quote ever so many things like there's nothing like the hunting of man and all that good stuff, and people care for nothing else. Obviously, that's not verbatim. So there's that sort of gain out of it. And then there's the moral mercenary, and we've seen a lot of that nowadays, a lot more nowadays than you used to see back then. Obviously, there was like in the Bosnian War, there was moral mercenaries where they were going out and there was a fighting against genocide. They were fighting the Serbs because of what the Serbs were doing. And you look at the YPG and people like that now, the Kurds, the amount of foreign fighters there that are going out, not because they're getting paid, it's just because, and usually you'll see that the moral mercenary is someone who's not from a military background. You know what I mean? It's your chefs, your barmen, your doormen, your paramedics, your bankers, your guy sitting on his PlayStation or his PC at home, sees the plight of the Kurds, for example, and in their fight against ISIS, ISIL, whatever those fucking bellends want to call themselves this week, or the three of them that's left anyway, and they see this plight of these people, and then they obviously make the journey to northern Iraq, Syria, wherever, to fight against this Islamic extremist threat. So that's your two types of sort of mercenary. And I would dare say the moral mercenary, in my eyes, is a very noble cause. You know what I mean? For me and you to pick up a weapon system and go and fight in somebody else's war, that's natural to us. But to take someone who's might not have even seen a real firearm in their life, now I'm talking your British moral mercenaries, and there's quite a famous one called Jack Hughes, who was killed a few years ago, who was quite well known, no military experience whatsoever, picked up his passport and just flew out there. And he flew out there, and he was a well-loved, well-respected young man. You know what I mean? And he did do quite well with the Kurds out there, and he was unfortunately killed a few years ago. Now these people are getting prosecuted when they come back to the UK, the
Right.
United States, the Netherlands, because they've worked for terror groups. And I use terror groups loosely. The YPG is classed as some governments as terror groups,
Yep.
but in the same breath, our government, when I say our government, I'm talking the British government, is sending certain amount of troops out there. I'm not talking special forces. I'm talking regular infantry battalion troops to go and teach these guys. And we gifted them 50 caliber machine guns, for example. And I think that's all I'll say on that matter. But in the same breath, we're prosecuting these people for fighting for them. So it's a bit hypocritical. I think there should be certain guidelines in place. The YPG, to me, aren't a terror group. To Turkey, they are, because they engage Turkish troops as well.
The only thing I'll say about, you brought up the YPG. The only thing I will say about them is they are a communist, philosophically organization, and so I wouldn't fight for them. My more morality in warfare, I never talk about the money until it's a sure thing. It's just not what I do. But I want to know, who is it for, and I can smell a bullshit artist. And trust me, you know this, and you've known me long enough to know, I've been fucked over twice on contracts. Literal contracts where it's not like a static gig where I'm just doing this, that, or the other. It's something more real. Yeah.
Fluid.
Yeah. And so I want to know, who's it for. I want to know where it's at, and I want to know what it's about. I don't need all the specifics, but if I can't get those 3 general questions answered, I don't leave my house. And honestly, I did one time this last gig, which I liked the people. The company was what it was. I'm not going to get into, I haven't named and shamed any of them, but I normally will not leave my house for under $10K a month, and that's just me, because if I'm going to go do this and I accepted those 3 things, then those 3 things usually point. I accepted less money. No, I take that back. I've done it twice. 2 times I've accepted less money. It was just because I was bored and I wanted to get back out there.
Yeah.
And I
it was
found
something
that,
you believed in.
And yes, but it was also one of them things where I was like, you know what? I'm bored. I'll get back out there. I'll mix in, and
You were pissing the wife off. You were pissing the wife off if she wanted you gone for a few months.
Yes, exactly. You've hit that on the nose.
Can't you go and fucking kill somebody? Yeah. Just get out my hair for a few weeks.
Yeah, going out there and do your fucking bullshit. Yeah, that's exactly how that rolls. But you say that tongue in cheek, but there's more reality to that than anybody knows. I mean, think about it. The one thing that's been common, especially within our trade, is the amount of, and we should cover that sometime, the amount of damage it actually does to the family, because daddy's gone for a protracted period of times, and sometimes you can't even talk about what the fuck you did. For years. I mean, shit. The whole Indonesia thing, I told the guy, I won't post any of that stuff for 2 years, and guess what? I didn't. You and I talked about it, but you never saw any pictures of it.
No, it was totally under the radar, offline, no details. It was just a topic of conversation that was brushed against. Yeah. Again, it does take it out on the families, and like going back to, like, say, the YPG being a communist sort of like backed organisation. Again, it's as you look at it, it's the lesser of the 2 evils, and it's what our governments are good at. All you got to do is look at the 80s, the Mujahideen. We armed them, we trained them, and then
They bit us in
that
the ass.
bites us in the ass when we're getting CIA teams and MI6 teams with special forces to go in and buy back all these anti-air weapons that we've sold them fucking 20 odd years ago. You know what I mean? And we've still got the fucking serial numbers for. Right? You said you've only got 5. We sold you 15. Where are the other fucking 10? Or we don't know. We'll see.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, you're going back to the Mooch. We can take it even closer to that under Clinton. What happened in Benghazi.
Yeah.
They always want to go and talk this smack about Khashoggi. I'm not talking about Adnan, the gun dealer, who, when I say guns, you know what I mean. It's not just guns. It's fucking anything you want. And you and I both know places that if we really wanted to buy shit and we're overseas, it's not a problem to buy this shit on the market. But the fact remains is Khashoggi's nephew, when he got killed, the journalist, the Saudi, you think it wasn't because, we need to shut him up because he knows a little too much? The gun business is still in, what was it, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. They used to feature and say Adnan Khashoggi, worldwide billionaire from selling all of his weapons dealer. And he was a Saudi. And so when you look at what happened in Benghazi, when you look that we actually had CIA and MI6 teams helping out the quote-unquote good Islamicist, the good freedom fighters in Syria and Iraq, and yet our Air Force is accidentally dropping resupplies to the enemy our special forces and our other troopers are fighting. That's a problem. And that's why I hate that lesser of two evils, and that's why I'm so particular, because I'm sorry, and I know you're not this way, but I do not trust my government at all when it comes to that. And that's why, really, I haven't worked for the U.S. government directly since I actually realized certain things, and that's all I'll go on about.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's a shady place that no one will ever know the full depth, how far that pool goes. Somebody at some point in either an intelligence service or at a certain governmental level, certainly not the president or the prime minister, because again they'll always need that element of deniability. But somebody somewhere knows how deep that pond goes. Again, and it's all cells. It's that deniability that need to know. One person doesn't need to know everything. It's that fractured and splintered that, you know what I mean? You'll never know how far it goes. And again, it's about coming back to it. It's the arming and training of the lesser of the cuntiest groups out there. Let's arm these because they are massive cunts. They're only being a bit cunty. They might throw gears off a roof or something like that, but hey, we can accept that as long as they're fighting ISIS or ISIL. And we're seeing it massively. You look at Syria and Libya and places like that. Obviously, the big what we should have learned was from Iraq. Look what happened in Iraq. It was just one big fuck up, one massive fuck up. They just left this huge vacuum that was quickly filled by the Mahdi army, by all these. The thousands of fucking swords of Islam, Muslim fucking lions or whatever they want to call themselves. You know what I mean?
It's factionalized the entire area.
Yeah, it's filtering through all that and finding the best of the bad bunch. Where with the YPG, it was like, look, they are a communist-backed, Marxist sort of thing. But they didn't start out like that. It's just the fact that that ideology was bred into them because that was the only people that were helping them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's where it came from. I'm sure as from day one of their struggles, if we sort of manned up and went, these people hate these people, let's fucking get in there and help them out, then there would be all singing, all dancing, capitalist, Western-backed, you know what I mean, a Western-backed party. But they're not, the YPG. And they do, you know what I mean, a lot of their flags have the sort of like the communist red star and stuff like that.
Yep.
Are the extreme communists, is it going to be a threat to the Western world? I very much doubt it, because fucking hell, if we're going out there to have to help them fight their war, then you know, I don't think they're much of a threat. They just want to be left alone. So the YPG certainly aren't a threat to the West. To Turkey, completely different question. I've got a very, very good friend who I work with who's Turkish, and in his land, the YPG's seen as bad as ISIS, you know, because they're sort of observation posts on mountains are getting taken out by tow launches and stuff like this because the YPG, you know, they're a bit like the where they aren't recognised as a nation, if you know what I mean.
Right.
They're indigenous people, but they don't have a nation of their own.
Right.
So they just live on like the border of two countries, and they get persecuted by both countries. You know, like the Kurds. So it's a bit like that, and you've got a lot of moral mercenaries working out there for them to varying degrees of success. There's obviously your moral mercenaries that go out there because it's the right thing to do, and then you get the ex-military types going out there to varying degrees of success. Again, once you're out the military and you go and work for another government or another bunch of people, they cannot prove what job you've done in the military. You can go out there as being a former member of Combat Applications Group, DevGru, or wherever, SAS, SBS, Royal Marines, Paras, Infantry, you know, and that's your background. And you can be stood next to a guy that says, oh yeah, I used to be in the British military and I was fucking ex-SAS, when he might have been a chef or a driver, you know what I mean? Or a guy who says, oh yeah, I was Team 3, I was Navy SEAL, I was a sniper in Navy SEAL, when he happened to be a fucking aircav or, you know,
fuck all. Yeah.
A laundry operator.
A Walter.
Yeah, a Walter Mitty. Or there's your Walter Mitties and your bloaters. Those who thought, like, bloat their this is what I used to do, when in fact that wasn't your job. You were doing something completely different. You were human resources, you know, and quickly get found out in these jobs. So there's sort of the ex-military that go out there for the money, and because not so much for the money, because as I understand, they had a hard time getting money from the YPG, but it's because it's a lot of it's from all they've known, or they've got that kick out of conflict, and they just want to be in the stuff, and that's understandable, because as you know, and as I know, there's nothing better. When you're in it, it's like, this is fucking shit. You know, but when you're at home and you're just potting around and you've got your wife on your case, or you're studying a line at the bank and you're thinking, fuck this shit, send me back to Afghanistan.
Well,
you know,
I told you after 05 when I got back, or 06, 05, 06, when I got back, there happens to be a police training center where they fire automatic rifles. And I'll never forget, after coming in, I had to stay in Canada for a little bit just for tax reasons. I couldn't come into the U.S. until I had X amount of days. And so when I get back,
because you're a tax dodging cunt.
No, it's just that's the rules. You have to be out X amount of days to get any kind of, and actually the tax break's not as great as people think, but I don't want to get into all that minutia. But the point being is, I come back that evening, the evening of that day, like at 1 a.m. As soon as the day happened, or it probably was a little later, I took a picture at the Canadian side of the border with the newspaper, Canadian newspaper, right in front of me with the date, so the IRS couldn't say something. Plus, you know, I got my passports. If you're an American citizen, sometimes they will not stamp your passport, but I actually asked the customs guy to stamp it, and he did.
Yeah.
They don't have to, because you're re-entering your nation. It's really not a big deal. So anyways, my point being is, well, that was back then. I mean, it's changed a lot since then. Anyways, I don't want to get into all the minutiae of that crap. But the point being is, I made sure to take that picture. And I'll never forget that morning when I woke up after driving 3.5 hours here. I woke up, I'm sitting out on my stoop, and all of a sudden I hear that. I'm like, you know how you feel when you first get home. You're like, whoa, okay, everything's different, but everything's the same. Yeah. And that weird disconnect you have. where you go to the grocery and all of a sudden you can buy what the fuck ever you want to
Yeah,
eat.
yeah.
Stupid
After,
shit like that.
yeah, I was spending all that time in Afghanistan, and there's elements of time where you didn't see the colour green for fucking weeks on end. Then you come home and everything's green, and it's like it's just a fucking absolutely foreign a foreign country to you, even though it's home because you've spent so long away. That all of a sudden it's green.
Yeah.
When I was working in Central America, it's just all you see is fucking green, nothing but green and brown. Spending that long in the fucking jungle, then coming out and seeing a blue car, and you're like, fucking hell, different colours. Yeah, so it
Yep.
is. Yeah, it's. I know where you're coming from on that one, brother.
But all of a sudden I heard that automatic weapons fire that morning. Whenever I woke up, it probably wasn't morning, it was probably noon or so. Anyways, I hear them shooting, and I honestly felt really displaced. And I hear them on the rifle range, and all of a sudden I took a big draw of my cigarette, took a big breath, relaxed, and I was like, I'm home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's just that kind of those little things that people don't understand, but we do get. And
I find it sort of it's a click. What I mean by that is sometimes it happens. I've come home off mission or operations or jobs or whatever, and it's taken me a day or so to get back in. I've come back from other places, and it's taken me 2-3 weeks to sort of readjust to it all. And it's sort of like you might wake up one day and be the same as you were the day before, like, fucking, what's going on here? My head's battered. And then something will happen. You'll see something, or someone will say something, and it'll just be, and you'll be like, boom, I'm home. And it's just carrying normal jogging. You know what I mean? It's strange. It's strange. Being able to just drive, like you said there, being able to drive down to McDonald's and get a burger, or I'm going to go for a walk, and I don't have to sign out, or I don't have to fucking load 6 weapon systems, you know what I mean, and do fucking 17 radio checks and book out of an ops room just to go to the shop. You know what I mean? The
oh
grocery
yeah,
store. It's strange. It's strange.
the
But then
NAFI or the PX. That
yeah, but then there's times where you're sitting there and you're thinking, life is so simple in those places. It's black and white. It's so simple, the way of life. You get up, and depending on how far up and down the chain you are or what job you're doing, someone says we need this doing. You go, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. Someone says, yeah, we're happy with that. You go and tell your guys, right, guys, this is what we're fucking doing. This person needs to be doing this or this or this. Let's go and do it. And it's go and you might die, you might not die, and you come back, and then you go to sleep. You go and play some fucking PlayStation. You jack it off in a fucking Portaloo or whatever you want to do, and every day is pretty much the same. Obviously, when you're out on the ground, things are different, and it's I don't know. It's because it's quite disjointed as well. There can be some like routine to it, but that routine is very, very fluid. It can be broken up in an instant just by the sound of a gunshot, the sound of a mortar going off,
yep.
a radio call coming in, and it can go from being laid on your bed reading a book, snoozing, to all out firefight, arterial spray, detonations next to your fucking vehicle, your body, whatever,
Yep.
within seconds. You know what I mean? Or, you know what I mean? You can be laid on your bed reading a book and getting your head down with your hand on your cock 1 minute, and 2 minutes later you could be in your full kit, blasting out the gate under heavy machine gun fire.
Yep.
So it's getting used to that. Right, I'm going to go to the shop today, and I don't need to carry 6 weapon systems with me.
Yep.
I don't need to run through the what ifs. I don't need to check this is working or this is working. I don't need to turn around to my wife and do a gear check on her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have you got your fucking morphine? Have you got your fucking caps? Have you got your, you know what I mean? Is your radio batteries fresh? How long have you had them fucking rounds in that magazine? Because I don't want you to press the trigger and it go click instead of bang. It's all that stuff, and it's just getting used to this. I want the mundane, of living normal life again.
The minutia.
And I can see why people turn to contracting and mercenary. Again, dragging us back to our subject, is because you're getting up on a morning and you're painting the fence, or you're taking the car for fuel, or you're getting some new tyres on your car, you're walking the dog, or you're having to fucking fix a broken step or just go shopping. You know what I mean? It is that mundane, everyday stuff that people might be content with, but the likes of those who have spent time doing law enforcement, you know what I mean, in a high stress job, thrive on it. It is a drug, like you said a few shows ago. It is a drug. It's like cocaine. It's like alcohol. It's like heroin. Like nicotine. It's adrenaline.
It's
You know what I
addiction.
mean?
Yeah.
Or maybe not so much adrenaline. It's just that waiting for something to happen. You know, it's going to happen, and when it does happen, I want to be tested.
Well,
you know what I mean? I want to prove my mettle. I want to prove that I'm not just. You know what I mean? And that's why a lot of people have a hard time letting go of the military, especially those like ourselves that spent so long there. I spent 25 years in the military, you know,
right.
and it fucking I am in the transition now, becoming a full blood civilian, and it's hard. I'm thinking,
Yep.
I'm never going to be as cool again in my life unless I start doing contracting work. But is that the right choice?
Right. No, I totally.
Like you said, I think the price, the who, what, why, and the you know what I mean, has to be right to again decide to dip your toe back into that pond.
Oh yeah,
You know?
Here's the interesting thing that you brought up. It really, I can encapsulate it this way, and it takes us right back to why men do it, and it probably is the biggest draw. Not for the guy who just wants to go over and be a medic and help the people, or somebody wanting to go over and monitor elections or something like that. I'm talking about the guy who's actually the guy who's good with the still, who carries a gun, or polymer nowadays, right? So my point is the adrenaline jack that you get, even the drawdown when you're shaking, everything's over. That 30 seconds of absolute sheer terror that you're never gonna get anywhere else. Having bullets fling by you like angry bees, like and the towel snaps of them, the sounds of the ricochet. If anything goes boom, those sounds that, of course, when you're new to it, that stuff, a lot of it goes away. You don't even notice it. I can't tell you how many times it almost was like I was wearing Hearing Pro. Okay? I guess my brain just cut off my ears, from taking any input. But then after your first time, when your cherry's popped, your physical cherry is popped, and your mental cherry, I guess, is popped, and you're working on muscle memory, you do get some of those sounds. And it's not complete. You know what I'm talking about. I see. I even have a hard time describing it. But
it's that fog of war, isn't it? It's that terror that it's your brain's first. I remember the first time I got shot at a long time ago, and it is 25 so years ago. I'm not ashamed to say that I pissed myself. You know what I mean? It was just like fuck, pissed myself.
Yeah.
And I look around me. And all these people who were seasoned operators took cover, and I'm the fucking young guy that's never been shot at before, 18-year-old, stood there with my cock in my hand, covered in piss,
right,
thinking, right, the first thing I need to do is find somewhere to fucking hide. I don't know where it's coming from, but there's this wall disintegrating around me. I just need to hide,
right.
And then it's like, now what do I do? All right, I need someone to tell me what to do here, because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and again, it's until I don't know where the fire was coming from. I couldn't tell you how many rounds were fired at me. I just know I was getting shot at. Everybody ran away and fucking hid somewhere and started firing back. And I'm like, what the fuck? Until someone fucking goes, start getting that fucking thing moving, dickhead.
Yeah, get your gun going.
And afterwards, people were telling me what was going on. I was like, really? What? Huh?
Yep.
Fucking, I had no clue what the fuck was going on. And I didn't know that around where I basically the only place I could hide was behind a curbstone. You know what I mean? It was the only place. I was stood in the middle of the fucking street, so it was like a high curbstone. It was just about a foot high, this curb, and I just laid down fucking flat, became one with the asphalt. And I just remember afterwards people going, fucking hell, you piss wet through. And I said, yeah, I pissed myself. They went, no, it's all down your back. And I put my hand there and it was all this like warm, wet stuff. And I thought, I've been fucking shot. But a round had hit off the fucking curb and clipped my belt kit and split my water
bottle.
Yeah. So it's, and I didn't know. I didn't, because I was that
Right.
fucking terrified and I couldn't tell you what happened, you know, and it's only other people sort of telling me what happened that all these details came together. But 3 or 4 times later, you can see, right, I was shot at by probably this caliber, sounded like an AK-47
Yep.
or a variant of, and it sounded like 10 to 15 rounds from that direction. This is what we did. This is what we did. This is what we did. And it's that you crave, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally get it, man. And how many times, even after, here's one of the little things they don't talk about. You see soldiers wearing knee pads and shit. Dude, you know how long it took, and that's why my knees are totally bashed, besides other reasons, you know, humping and all the other bullshit I've done. But humping meaning carrying a large Bergen backpack, you know, up and down hills. Okay, that's pretty much where I'm at with what I'm explaining. But how many times pebbles and gravel you're picking out of your knees from hitting the fucking floor so hard, the deck so hard, and how many times you've got spall, which is nothing more than you know, bullets take chunks of concrete, rock, whatever, and it gets in you, and you're having to pick that shit out of you. But you don't even notice it when you're doing it. That's the odd thing about it. I don't really want to get into too much more. Hey, it looks like we're going to have a episode 3 because we still didn't cover everything. And I know you got a scoot and I got to too, because otherwise this thing's going to upload at 0 dark 30. And I'd like to get it out today. But man, as always, Baz, my brother, it's always excellent talking to you. And hopefully either one of us are going to cross the pond. We'll get together and lift a couple pints.
Couple. That's optimistic, mate.
That's it, brother.
Put away about 4 or 5 days, I think.
I think so, probably.
Now, how much of that is going to be drinking and how much of it's going to be fucking recovery time? We're getting older now, mate. We're getting older now.
Oh,
that recovery time needs to be longer.
Why you got to bring that up, man? That just sucks. But with that being said, thanks everybody for stopping by Kaiser's Castle, taking a seat on my big orange couch, drinking your coffee, your tea, your soda, your pop, whatever you want to call it, having your adult libation, and spending a little time eavesdropping on a conversation with Baz and I. And with that being said, what I will do this one time, you're going to hear a computer voice. And that computer voice is going to say the new quote. And it will always be my quote for Kaiser's Castle.
Vive la mort, vive la guerre, vive le sacre mercenaire.
Just remember that, folks. Vive la mort, vive la guerre, vive le sacre mercenaire. With that being said, thank you very much, Baz.
Pleasure,
Shuff out.
buddy.
Shuff out.
Pass out.